Alright, super quick, because I keep seeing it in the comments. People want to know why the Portugal flag is up. I'm going to leave it a mystery until we stream the Golden Globes live and my roommate is on stream, and then everyone can ask him. Because I also don't know. He put it up. So I'll let you guys ask him when he's on stream. How's that sound? So let's talk about Judas and the Black Messiah, which in a year filled with films that got pushed or were delayed, this was one that I was excruciatingly excited for. I saw the trailer for it when I went to the theater to see Tenet. It was the first time I saw the trailer, and I felt my testosterone level, I would just push through the fucking roof. I was amped, okay? I was amped for this goddamn thing. And it helped, obviously, that there was very little to be excited for. Ow. But anyone who would deny anticipation for this film is probably a crackhead, because the trailers for this movie were awesome, and the marketing team killed it, which is why it's so interesting that it's not being discussed heavier as a campaign or as a candidate for higher Oscars like Best Picture, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. If you follow me on Letterboxd, you'll see that I gave this film an 8 out of 10. I think if I had seen it in a theater, I probably would have pushed it to a 9, maybe even a 10. But what's interesting is for completely different reasons. I had 3 friends come over to my apartment literally like hours after I had finished watching this movie on HBO Max, and they had just gotten out of the theater seeing it. And we had very different experiences watching this movie despite all loving it. I found that if you are going to watch this at home, kind of on your couch in the comfort of your home as opposed to going out with COVID and everything right now, you will probably be more drawn and will love the movie more for its story elements. For the character arc of Lakeith Stanfield's character and how horribly Shakespearean the ending of this story is, how tragic this movie is, and its themes of betrayal and friendship and how this film ends. I think that will be what impacts you the most. If you see it in a theater, I think you almost get more of an experience out of this film, and the story is almost secondary to some of these massive set pieces and sequences that will blow you out of your fucking seat in Dolby Atmos and with that projector and sound system around you. You know, it's tough to find that balance with this film, but I think almost like a second viewing in a theater would draw you further to the story, because both elements of this film in that fashion are done so well. And I loved both things about that. I just think I would have loved this movie more if I'd seen it in a theater, and that's on me. My girlfriend was in town. I didn't want to risk anything for her. I didn't want to risk anything for her roommates when she went back home. So, you know, I'm going to start going to theaters now that it's just my life that I'm risking. But I really did love this movie, and there's a lot to talk about with it in terms of its Oscar campaign, and we'll get to Kaluuya in a few minutes. I want to give a lot of kudos to Shaka King, who directed this film. There are some shots in this film that are unbelievable, and I found it to be very meticulous. I didn't think anything was done for just the sake of doing it. I thought every sequence was very well put together, whether it be for the sake of tension or whether it be for the sake of you know, almost like a heartfelt feeling, and there's a lot of character work in this film, which I appreciated, because it would be easy to ignore the complexity of these characters, and the screenplay nor the direction does so. A lot of time is set aside to establish these characters and their relationships with one another and build them so that you really do feel something, because again, if you've read a history book, you know that this movie isn't going to end happily. If you've seen the trial of the Chicago 7, you know that this film doesn't have a happy ending. And oftentimes, knowing that makes the hit softened, right? If you go into a movie knowing what's going to happen, the overall emotional punch of the film has a capability to be diminished. And it doesn't in this. It hits just as hard at the end of the movie, because you feel as though you've really gone on this journey and this arc with these characters. And again, that was what I noticed most upon watching it at home. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all, because the more action, quote-unquote, sequences are also just as well put together and as well designed. I think sometimes the movie has the ability to jump around a little bit without being entirely clear as to what is going on. I think there is the potential to get lost a little bit if you aren't 100% laser focused in, but you're always able to figure out where you are. I have very few issues with this film. There are a couple of extras that are really bad and deliver some lines really poorly, but that's, like a minor criticism that can just kind of pull you out of the film every so often. The performances lead-wise are great. The only one that I didn't love at times, and I love him, but Martin Sheen pulled me out of the movie every so often, and he felt a little silly and over the top and a bit of a caricature. I do think better casting in that regard actually would have made certain sequences a little bit better. I loved the scenes where he was in front of the big screen and the room was dark and he's speaking to the FBI. I thought he was great in those. It was any scene where he was at his desk that I thought he felt a little bit like a caricature, but it wasn't distracting enough that it was continuously pulling me out of the movie. He's also not in that much. But otherwise, the casting is great. It is very interesting to me that Lakeith Stanfield is not getting more attention for this because he's ultimately the character with the arc, right? He's sort of the central heart that does have that big change by the end of the film. I knew the story of Fred Hampton going into this movie. I didn't know the story of his character. Upon seeing the trailers, my initial assumption was he was a Black Panther Party member who was infiltrated by the FBI as a result of his past criminal history and was used to get to Fred Hampton. I didn't realize that they placed him in the Black Panther Party in order to infiltrate. So, that was a bit of an interesting shift for me at the beginning of the film. I was very interested by his character at the very start, and where he ends up is very much felt. You follow along with him, this kind of constant battle in his head of, I have no choice, but he begins to feel what he's doing is wrong as he grows closer to these people and he grows closer to the movement, and Jesse Plemons even begins to notice this, right? I thought he was excellent in this film, and as Lakeith Stanfield continues to put out more and more roles, people continue to get less and less surprised that he's excellent because he's very clearly an excellent performer. But Daniel Kaluuya, I think, is getting more of the attention because, to the Academy, he's a little more established. It's not going to be easy to ignore Lakeith Stanfield in the coming couple of years. He's had a lot of massive film roles now and a lot of really heavily critically acclaimed film roles. This is sort of a big leading performance, I think, for him. I think this is going to propel him forward even more because this is a very widespread film that a lot of people are going to see, and he's taking the lead in it, whereas, Knives Out, which was very widespread, he was a smaller character amidst a massive cast. He's definitely one of the more supporting characters. So, I think this is a big role for him. And even Uncut Gems, you walked away from that, everyone talking about Adam Sandler, obviously, and then you had Lakeith Stanfield, who was excellent, but wasn't the runaway from that film. But Kaluuya, in the eyes of the Academy, I think is a little bit better established, so they're campaigning him harder. Plus, Warner Brothers might be smart enough to look at this slate and go, no one's beating Chadwick Boseman, so let's put our money and resources into Kaluuya for supporting actor and see if that will propel him to a win, which I think it could. This race is reminding me a lot of when Mahershala Ali won for Moonlight. I have a feeling we're going to see a similar race to that. What I mean by that is precursor-wise. If I recall correctly, Aaron Taylor Johnson won that year the Golden Globe for Nocturnal Animals, of which Michael Shannon wound up being nominated for the Oscars. And Dev Patel won the BAFTA, and I believe Mahershala Ali won the SAG. And so, for me, when I went into those Oscars, it was up in the air of who was going to win. I was wrong, because the Academy showed their love for Moonlight that night, and I ate my words. But I think we might see something similar this year because I do think this race is actually a very interesting one, and I do still think someone like Leslie Odom Jr. has the ability to run away with this Oscar, or if people are right and Trial of the Chicago 7 is going to be as loved by the Academy as people think, Sacha Baron Cohen could be one to look at. I foresee something maybe like a Leslie Odom Jr. takes the Globe. Kaluuya takes the SAG, Baron Cohen could take the BAFTA, and then the fucking Oscar is anyone's game. I don't see this category being a runaway for Kaluuya right now like a lot of people do. People are talking about him being the blatant standout performance of this film. I don't know if I feel that way. I think he is as excellent as Lakeith Stanfield and Jesse Plemons. I think the three of them are on an even keel of excellent performances, and when I think about this movie, I think about all three of them. When I think to something like Whiplash, which was a blatant J.K. Simmons show stealer, and he was clearly going to win for that, as much as I love to think about Miles Teller, my mind instantly snaps to every sequence with J.K. Simmons when he steals the show. Does Daniel Kaluuya steal the show when he's on screen in this film? I do think so. I think when he is on screen, he runs it, and you're instantly drawn to his presence and his charisma and his gravitas. And I think he does have that going for him because that is the kind of shit that the Oscars love. It's going to be a really interesting race, and I think he's up for a really big challenge, but I do think this could run away for him. He's not 21. I know that's been going around a lot. Look, I'm 19. Fred Hampton was 2 years older than me. Daniel Kaluuya does not look 2 years older than the guy looks, his age. So that was a little bit jarring at the end, but I think the Academy is going to be willing to let that slide. I really don't think that's gonna play into the way that they're voting on his performance. In terms of the film itself and Best Picture, it's to me almost surprising, right? That you're sitting there going, how is this not on the list? How is this not on everyone's list of the potential 10 Best Picture nominees? And I think, in a very unconventional award season for releases, and again, I'm big on release schedule. I think release schedule is one of the biggest things that you have going for you when going into an award season. And in a season in which that was, thrown off its fucking rocker, it's tough to use that. But you have to recognize that, people are just now starting to see this movie. It's just now starting to make noise. It's screened at Sundance pretty much for the first time for critics and just wide released. Look at something like Nomadland, which wide released today, and I can finally watch that movie. But I've been hearing about it, and it's extremely strong reception for 6 months now? 5 months? I've been hearing about that film for it seems like forever, and Judas and the Black Messiah would pop up with a really great trailer every so often, but I'd have no idea if the movie was well received or not. And I think that its lack of noise and attention that it's had up until now, which might be too late, kind of hurt it in that Best Picture run. Maybe it's a sleeper nomination. Maybe it's possible that with PGAs, it snaps itself into one of those nomination slots. It's possible, but I read a bad source for my last video, so that's on me. It's not a cemented 10 this year. Anything could fucking happen because the Oscars love doing that, and I cannot wait for that shit to stop, by the way. Part of me saying it was this year was just hopeful thinking because I fucking hate that rule. But I think it'll be an interesting one to follow, but Kaluuya is a shoo-in for a nomination. For sure the guy's going to be nominated. The question becomes, can he win? If he starts sweeping precursors, then we've got ourselves a winner. But if it does juggle a lot, I think it might, because you have a lot of really strong contenders in there. You're looking at Leslie Odom Jr., who I think also kind of provides a show stealing, as well as a climactic arc of a performance. You walk away from that film remembering that character's arc. I think he's a powerhouse. I think Sacha Baron Cohen could be big if the Academy loves Trial of the Chicago 7 that much. Paul Raci could be a Mark Rylance, sneak up out of fucking nowhere and win the Oscar. I don't think Chadwick Boseman can take 2 Oscars in a night. I think the double nomination would be a win in of itself, especially considering he's going to win lead actor. I think this category is awesome. And I think for the first time in a while, we're going to have some really interesting actor races. Other than lead actor, which I think is set in fucking stone, lead actress could be Davis, McDormand, or Mulligan. Supporting actor could be any of these guys. Supporting actress has the ability to be Seyfried or Olivia Colman. I think we might actually see some interesting races this year, and that's the kind of shit that I love. I love to see some good races, especially when it's in the acting, because that's 4 of the big 6. So it's really fun to watch those, in my opinion. Other than that, I'm gonna keep advocating for the best trailer Oscar to be instated, because this film would be Academy Award winning film, Judas and the Black Messiah. That fucking trailer, it's just every time I hear it, I get so fucking amped, dude. I'm sorry. I I don't really know if I had anything else to say. I totally lost my train of thought because my father just texted me this picture of him and my dog. Look at that. How am I supposed to remember what I was talking about? Anyway, those are my thoughts on the film. I really loved it, and I would genuinely recommend it to anyone. It's also, it's the second time in a while that, or in a couple of years, that there's been like a good companion piece at the Oscars. I remember, I think it was 2017, watching Dunkirk and Darkest Hour back to back was really kind of cool, and it provided some really cool insight into like behind the scenes of Darkest Hour and then also behind the scenes of Dunkirk. I think this and Trial of the Chicago 7 are actually two really interesting films to watch together, and Trial of the Chicago 7 is going to be free for 48 hours this weekend, so if you haven't gotten around to seeing it, get around to see it and watch this right after. Those are my thoughts on the supporting actor race and why the Judas and the Black Messiah Best Picture campaign hasn't been so strong. I think it's due to release schedule, but let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. If you agreed with me, if you disagreed with me, whatever, I want to hear it. A couple big things coming up. I'm going to watch Nomadland tonight, hopefully have a review up this weekend or at the beginning of this coming week. Golden Globes are on the 28th of February. We will be doing a big stream for that. I should have a bunch of people here. We're all going to be watching. It's going to be really fun. We'll get our first reactions into the award ceremony because I think that this has the ability to just flip everything right now because there's so little that we're able to predict with this award season, so I think it's going to be a really fun first award show. Be there for that live stream, not this coming Sunday and not the following Sunday, but the Sunday after. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.